I never thought the sound of a fork hitting a porcelain plate would be the soundtrack to my life falling apart. But there I was, sitting across from a man who had been my hero for 25 years, only to realize he had been counting every cent I cost him since the day I was born. My dad didn't wait for the dessert or the coffee to deliver his blow. He just looked at me over a half-eaten slice of ham and told me, in front of our entire extended family, that I was a leech and that my time in his house was officially over. Imagine sitting there with your cousins, your aunts, and your grandparents, all of them suddenly silent, staring at you while your own father tells the world he thinks you're a parasite. Was I wrong for feeling like my heart had been ripped out right there next to the mashed potatoes? Or was he justified in choosing the most public, humiliating moment possible to kick me to the curb? I want you to really think about that as I tell you how we got to that table, because what he didn't mention in his little announcement was that I had spent the last 3 years sacrificing everything to keep our family business from sinking into the ground. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the dynamic of the Miller household. My dad, Arthur, is a self-made man who built a successful landscaping and construction firm from nothing. Growing up, I idolized him. He was the guy who could fix anything, the guy who worked until his hands bled to make sure we had a nice house and a good life. But as I got older, I realized that his pride was a double-edged sword. He didn't just want to be the provider, he wanted to be the ruler. Everything in that house happened on his terms, and if you weren't contributing in a way he deemed worthy, you were essentially invisible. I went to college for business management because I wanted to help him. I saw the way he struggled with the back-end stuff, the billing, the scheduling, the digital marketing that he refused to learn. I figured that by getting my degree, I could come back and turn his local operation into a regional powerhouse. And for a while, that's exactly what I did. When I graduated 3 years ago, the economy was in a weird spot, and Dad's business was actually hurting. He wouldn't admit it to anyone else, but the debt was piling up. I moved back home, not because I wanted to be a leech, but because he asked me to. He told me he needed my college brain to fix the books. I took a salary that was barely enough to cover my car insurance and my phone bill, putting every other ounce of my energy into his company. I spent 60 hours a week in a cramped office, fighting with vendors, streamlining his payroll, and bringing in new contracts that literally saved the company from bankruptcy. I didn't pay rent, sure, but I was doing the work of a CFO for the price of a fast food worker. We had an unspoken agreement, or so I thought. The trouble started about 6 months ago when the business finally got back into the black. Suddenly, Dad's attitude changed. Now that the fire was out, he didn't seem to remember who had been holding the hose. He started making comments about how nice it must be to sit in an air-conditioned office while he was out in the heat doing real work. He conveniently forgot that the real work only existed because I had secured the municipal contracts that kept his crews busy through the winter. My sister, Megan, didn't help matters. She's the golden child who moved to the city to work in fashion. She visits twice a year, spends a fortune on Dad's credit card, and tells him exactly what he wants to hear. During her Thanksgiving visit, she kept making little jabs about how I was still living in my childhood bedroom, and how she couldn't imagine not having her own luxury space. I saw Dad nodding along, his eyes narrowing as he looked at me. I tried to defend myself, reminding them that I was working for the family, but Dad just waved me off, saying, "Family is one thing, son, but a man needs to stand on his own feet." I should have seen the writing on the wall then. I should have realized that to my father, loyalty has an expiration date. especially once he doesn't think he needs you anymore. Leading up to Christmas, the atmosphere in the house was suffocating. I was still doing all the billing, still managing the crews, but Dad stopped talking to me about business altogether. He started making decisions behind my back. Bad decisions like buying a fleet of new trucks we didn't need yet. When I tried to show him the cash flow projections, he literally threw the folder off his desk and told me to stop trying to manage him. He started calling me the resident guest instead of my name. It was a joke to him, but it felt like a serrated knife to me. I was exhausted, burnt out from 3 years of fixing his mistakes, and I was looking forward to Christmas dinner just to have a day of peace. My mom, bless her, tried to keep the peace, but she's always been terrified of Dad's temper. She'd whisper to me in the kitchen to just let him have his way, and that he's just stressed. But stress doesn't turn a father into a bully. It just reveals who he really is. On Christmas Eve, I stayed up late finishing the end-of-year tax prep for the business. I wanted to present it to him as a gift, showing him that we were ending the year with a massive surplus. I thought maybe, just maybe, seeing the hard numbers of what I'd accomplished would earn me a thank you, or at least a bit of respect. Christmas morning was deceptive. We opened presents, and I gave Dad a vintage watch he'd been eyeing for years, bought with a tiny bit of savings I'd managed to scrape together. He thanked me, but it felt hollow. Then came the dinner. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were all there. The table was beautiful, the food was incredible, and for the first 20 minutes, it felt like a normal family gathering. But then, the conversation turned to success. My uncle asked Megan about her promotions in the city, and she went on and on about her high-flying life, failing to mention that Dad still pays her rent. Then the table turned to me. My uncle asked, "So, when are you going to branch out and start your own firm or move up in the world?" Before I could answer, Dad dropped his fork. The clatter was so loud it felt like a gunshot. He looked me dead in the eye, his face turning that shade of purple it gets when he's been drinking too much eggnog and brooding. "He's not branching out," Dad said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Why would he? He's got a free room, free food, and a job I handed him out of pity. Let's call it what it is. You're a leech, son. You've been sucking the life out of this house and my pockets for 3 years. I'm done. Christmas is over, and so is your residency here. I want you out by the 1st of the year. You can't stay here anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. My aunt gasped. My mom looked at her plate like she wanted to disappear, and Megan just smirked into her wine glass. I felt the blood rush to my face, not out of shame, but out of a white, hot, blinding rage. I looked at the man who had asked me, begged me, to come home and save his skin 3 years ago, and I realized he truly believed his own lie. He had convinced himself that he did it all on his own, and that I was just a charity case. So, I did the only thing I could do. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I stood up, tucked my chair in perfectly, and said, "If that's how you feel, Dad, then I won't wait until the 1st. I'm leaving now." I walked out of the dining room, went upstairs, and packed my life into 3 suitcases. It took me 20 minutes. As I walked back down the stairs, I could hear them talking about me. Dad was saying, "See, he's got no spine. He'll be back in 2 days when he realizes he can't afford a motel." I didn't stop to say goodbye to anyone but my mom. I kissed her on the cheek, told her I loved her, and walked out into the cold December night. Now, before I tell you what happened next, because trust me, the leech had a lot more power than my father realized, I want to stop right here. I was the one who managed every password, every bank account, every vendor relationship, and every legal filing for that company. I was the only reason the IRS wasn't knocking on his door. When I walked out that door, I took all that knowledge and all those access codes with me. So, I have to ask you, if your father humiliated you in front of everyone you love and called you a parasite after you saved his life's work, would you have left him the keys to the kingdom? Or would you have let him figure it out on his own, the hard way? Pause the video right now and tell me in the comments, was I being petty, or was it time for him to face the reality of his real work? I didn't go to a motel. I went to my best friend's place, and for the next week, I kept my phone on silent. It blew up. My dad called 40 times on the first day, not to apologize, mind you, but to demand the password for the payroll software because the guys need to get paid and the screen is locked. I didn't answer. Then came the texts from Megan, calling me selfish and saying I was ruining the family because Dad was throwing a tantrum at home. I ignored those two. On December 30th, I sent one formal email to my father's business account. I resigned, effective immediately. I also informed him that as I was the sole administrator on all digital accounts, and since he had called me a leech and terminated my residency and employment, I would be turning over all physical files to his doorstep in a box. However, the digital infrastructure, the custom-built CRM I created, the client databases I managed on my personal cloud, and the optimized bidding software I developed was my intellectual property. I had paid for those subscriptions out of my own pocket over the years to keep his costs down. I canceled the subscriptions and deleted my personal data. When January 2nd rolled around, the real work hit a brick wall. Dad couldn't access the schedule for the cruise. He didn't know which clients had paid and which hadn't. He didn't even have the contact info for our biggest supplier because I had always handled the orders. The business ground to a screeching halt. He showed up at my friend's apartment, banging on the door, red-faced and screaming about loyalty. I opened the door just a crack and reminded him of his own words, "I'm a leech, remember, and leeches don't provide services. You wanted me to stand on my own feet, so I am. I've already accepted a job offer at a firm in the city. Your biggest competitor, actually. They were very impressed with the growth I managed to achieve for you." The look on his face was worth every second of the humiliation I felt at Christmas. He realized then that I wasn't the parasite. He was the one who had been living off my labor and my intelligence while giving me nothing but a cramped room and insults in return. He tried to threaten to sue me, but I reminded him that I had every contract and every agreement I'd ever signed, which was none, because he wanted to keep me off the books to save on taxes. The aftermath was messy. The business survived, but it shrunk back down to a 2-man operation. He had to sell the new trucks at a loss and move into a smaller office. My mom eventually left him for a few months to stay with her sister because his bitterness became unbearable. As for me, I moved to the city and my career took off. I don't look back with regret. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will use you until there's nothing left, and the only way to win is to stop playing the game. I learned that my value isn't defined by my father's approval, but by the work I know I'm capable of doing. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and honestly, it's been the most peaceful 2 years of my life. I hope this story serves as a reminder to anyone out there who feels undervalued by their family. You don't owe your life to people who only see you as a tool. If they call you a leech while you're the one providing the blood, it's time to let them see how they fare without you. Like this video if you think I did the right thing by walking out and taking my expertise with me. Subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself and dealing with toxic family dynamics. I want to hear your final thoughts. Did I go too far by deleting the digital infrastructure, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Share your experiences in the comments section, and I'll see you all in the next story.